All right, friends. Well, I am going to go ahead and get us started off. I am, again, Chris McKenna from Protect Young Eyes. Thank you so much for being with us this evening here in Michigan. There may be individuals joining us from other places, which we have really enjoyed finding out. But tonight we are going to talk about Snapchat and a lot of other things that surround this app. And we have a whole series of these webinars that you're hopefully going to be able to join us for. So I've got things going here. I'm going to play from the start. So there's a lot of ways to stay in touch with us through social media. We also have a free newsletter that goes out typically on Thursdays. Simply from the United States, text the word protect, the number 66866. And if you're outside of the US, you can simply put your email address in one of the email captures that's there on the website. And I'll refer to the website often, but you can also find us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. So yes, this is Snapchat. So many things to talk about this app, which is so influential with our teens and tweens today. So here's a few members of the Protect Young Eyes team. You can see me there. Normally I'd have my video on, but boy, we've had storms rolling through town I live in here, and my internet's been really bad all day. So I'm going to keep that off just to save bandwidth. But I'm joined tonight by Doug, who has been with me for almost the beginning here. Doug and his wife, Rose Crawford, and then Michelle, who is my executive assistant, who does a lot of logistics for our presentations. She is also joining us tonight. So those are some members of the Protect Young Eyes team. Happy to be here. Some Zoom helps. You'll notice at the bottom of your screen, there's a couple of ways which you can communicate with us, and Doug's going to be keeping track of those questions and comments. There's just general chat, which can be just back and forth. But there's also a Q&A. If based on something I've said, you have a question that you'd like Doug to answer, he would be happy to do that. And again, you can find that down at the bottom of your screen. And also, we've had some individuals who have requested a certificate of participation due to some sort of maybe pre-adoption or foster care situation that they might be in. And so in the link that all the registrants will receive after the webinar is done, not only will you have a website to go to where there's going to be a PDF of the slides, but there'll also be this PDF here for a certificate of participation where you can simply fill in your name, and it'll say there, you know, the date and the time and my signature so that you can get credit for this 30 minutes. These are the upcoming presentations or webinars that we have. So we did the Toxic Trio last Thursday, which was fabulous. We had people from 8 different countries join us for our first set of webinars. Today we'll have Snapchat. Next week we'll talk about a topic that's very important to me that we all get right, and that is the conversation about pornography. And then we'll end the month with TikTok, and then you can see what we have lined up in June around predators, YouTube, Netflix best practices, and using Instagram for good. So I hope that you're able to join us. Just as a bit of recap, and maybe you were able to watch this, but if not, here's an important piece of information from last week's webinar, and that was the Toxic Trio. And the Toxic Trio is 3 things, and when they're present, they just tend to produce a situation where we sometimes use technology inappropriately, whether you are a teen or an adult. And that's night, bedrooms, and boredom. And when those 3 things are present, it just tends to lead to a riskier situation. So that was the focus of last week's talk. And so right now, just because I'm always curious, I'm going to put up a poll question because I'd like to know where we might be from. So let me go ahead and launch poll number 1. It'll take just a second to come up on the screen here. So if you could just let me know where you're from. And again, privacy is important to us at Protect Young Eyes. I cannot tell who has answered what. There's a toggle in Zoom for polling that disconnects your answer from your email address. So I have no idea who's answering what. Just let us know where you are in the US or outside of the US. We had about 10% of our participants this afternoon who were from outside of the US, which is just always really thrilling for me. So we'll shut this down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great, we'll end the poll. Hopefully you can see those results. So surprise in the West, over half, which is where I'm at here in Michigan, but all over the place, including somebody from outside of the US. So thank you so much for joining us wherever you might happen to be. Our foundation at Protect Young Eyes is this, that parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whatever caring adult you happen to be, parents who are observant, engaged, and informed, these are active things, right? Often have kids and grandkids who learn how to use technology well. In other words, we believe that if we do certain things consistently and persistently enough, it tends to create digital trust. And that's what our objective is. We want to create bridges of digital trust between us and our children, because when that is there, then they're just less tempted to do the things that we don't want them to do. But as you can see on this continuum, sometimes our own fear on the left side of the continuum, or our busyness or apathy on the right side of the continuum, can create situations where either digital trust is just missing altogether because it's never been established, or there's always withdrawals being taken out because we are just too overbearing and bubble wrapping our kids with technology and not giving them any opportunities to lovingly try and sometimes fail a little bit on tech, so that at the point where they're leaving, they have the tools in order to use it well. Then that means we have to do the hard work in the middle. And that hard work in the middle, we've characterized as these 5 words that you see here: copy me, co-play, curiosity, conversation, and caring control. And I'm not going to fully unpack all of those words here tonight. You might hear me refer to them from time to time, but very quickly, copying is really what it says. Can they do the things that you're doing online? Can they copy your behaviors? Are you doing things with them? That's co-play. Are you asking very curious questions instead of condemning questions? Asking them open-ended questions that you're learning about why they use technology? Are you having great conversations, frequent, not one talk, but 100 little talks that are consistent and persistent? And are we not just in using parental control, but caring control with our young people and showing them how to make rules together? That's what we mean there. So those are just some things you might hear me refer to. So let's jump in. This is going to be fairly fast paced. This is not meant to go deep into certain parts of Snapchat. It's meant to give you a 50,000 foot flyover so that you can ask maybe some deeper questions of Doug in the Q&A if that's what you need to do. So let's go ahead and jump in. Now, at protectyoungeyes.com, which is obviously our website, under apps, and you'll see all the different apps that we've profiled and dug into. These are in alphabetical order, and going down to Snapchat, you'll find what I think is one of the most complete guides for using Snapchat. So much detail. So you just keep scrolling and scrolling, and screenshots and even video examples and stories and what to do where. And so this is going to be a link in an email that you receive after the webinar that I hope will be helpful for you. Let's look at some numbers. Before I got into youth ministry and internet safety, I was a CPA, so I like numbers. They help me make sense of big things that, well, the internet is certainly one of those big things. And so when you look at unique monthly users, Snapchat actually isn't maybe as big as you would think it is when you compare it to some of the other tech giants that are out there, like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Now, granted, 300 million, 300 to 400 million monthly unique users on Snapchat is still big, but when you compare it to the 2 billion on YouTube, it really is true that YouTube is the app that has more influence over our young people than any other app on earth. Now, Snapchat is very influential. I don't want to underestimate it, but this just sort of puts it in perspective. And some additional statistics for you are these: 61% of Snapchat users are female, that 90% of Snapchat users are young or young adults. 69% of US teens say they use Snapchat. And I've heard a lot of different statistics in the 80, even 90% range that say that 90% of teens are influenced by Snapchat in some way. In other words, even if you've decided your teen isn't going to use Snapchat, chances are, like my 15-year-old daughter who doesn't have Snapchat, that she is surrounded by young people who are using it. 3 billion is the number of daily snaps created. A third of the US population, or sorry, the world population. That's just a massive number. And then Snap, just information-wise, they also own Bitmoji. If you don't know what Bitmoji is, you probably will once you see it. If you've ever seen characters like these are Bitmojis, and it is a company that is also owned by Snapchat. So I want to go into question number 2. I'm curious as to how many people listening to the call here now have a child that they care for in their home somewhere that is using Snapchat in some way. I'm just curious. If you go ahead and answer that for me, I would appreciate it. All right, we will shut that down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share those results. So about 63-37, we were a little closer to 50-50 this afternoon, but certainly a lot of kids that are using Snapchat, which is fine. There's a lot of fun things in Snapchat, which you'll see. Certainly not a presentation that I'll demonize. I just want to talk factually so that parents who know your kids best, that you can make informed decisions. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share. All right, so according to the App Store, you can see here the top App Store screenshot is from Google Play. They've rated it as teen, which for them is ages 13 to 17. In the Apple App Store, they have it rated 12 plus, which Apple's app ratings are just still a mystery to me. According to COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act, young people are supposed to be at least age 13 in order to use it, and yet Apple's rating scale for apps says 12 plus, which makes no sense to me. But anyway, that's what it is. And if you were to look at the description as to what is happening inside of the app, Google Play Store doesn't provide a lot of details, but Apple's App Store provides a little bit more, where it says infrequent mild profanity, sexual content, tobacco, etc. The problem with these is that they're not unique to Snapchat. You would find these exact same descriptors on TikTok, on Instagram, on any of the other 12 plus social media platforms that are out there. And so as a parent or grandparent or guardian who's trying to make a decision, it doesn't give you a lot of unique attributes, which is why Protect Young Eyes exists. We try to fill that gap, show how it's really used, what can really happen, because I just don't think that this information is all that helpful. And I think it's also important to know that creating an account is just really easy. So I'm just going to let the screen go here, where you can see from just typing in a fake name, putting in a fake birthday, just selecting May 14th, 2004, quickly setting, just some generic password here, Johnny Test 3, which I think was the Gmail account that I made up. And then you can type in a mobile number and it will send you an automatic text message then to that mobile number, typing in a code. But you can create as many accounts from that mobile number as you want. It doesn't limit one account per number. And then you hit continue and boom, you're in. That's me. So you've created an account without a lot of effort. And so from Snapchat's perspective, that's great because it lets a lot of people in quickly. But when it comes to reporting accounts that maybe are attached to predators, they're so easily able to get back in. So let's talk about a few features in Snapchat. There are more than just these 6, but these are 6 of the more popular features with young people. We'll talk about filters, Snap Map, stories, snaps themselves, discover news, and then chat. Maybe you've heard of some of these things. So first, let's start off with face filters, okay? Face filters are accessed, where you see the red circle there around the little face on the home screen. This is like the main Snapchat home screen. And if I go ahead and start that up, if I click that, the LA Rams just had a new uniform, so you can do that. You got the popular rainbow mouth, the squishy face, dog tongue, all these things that kids like so much, right? And that is filters. And then you can export whatever you've made and send a snap with that filter, and kids have a lot of fun with that. Here are some things just to remember about face filters. Again, they're hilarious. There's a lot of expression and fun that can be had. I remember last Christmas, we handed my phone to my mom, so grandma, and had her play with some of the filters. And it was a blast watching grandma with the ostrich face and other things. So it can be fun, right? There are parts of this that can be enjoyable. It's also a way that kids express themselves. I think the type of face filters that a kid prefers can give you just a little peek into them. But at the same time, in our testing, we've noticed that the age gating, which is used in Snapchat, because you can, as you saw, you assign a birthday, and according to that birthday, if you're under 17, Snapchat tries to prevent alcohol and drug content from getting to the account, but it's not perfect. And last year, Coors Beer had a sponsored filter, and that sponsored filter slipped through the algorithm and was being shown to young people. So that's only happened at one time that we're aware of. For the most part, the face filters are a lot of fun, but Again, it just shows that it's not always a perfect system. Those are the filters. All right, let's jump into Snap Map. Nothing too mysterious about it. It is exactly what it says. It places you wherever your phone's location says you are on a map, and you will access Snap Map by swiping down on your phone. And when you do that, you will find yourself on a map. There I am. And there's little clusters, almost like heat zones, where a lot of people, you can see there's a little cluster there where there's a number of people who have their Snap Map turned on, and it's showing not individuals, but it's showing sort of that heat map. And the thing is, automatically it's set to default, where I'm ghosted and I can't be seen by others, but I can't lock that in, and it's so easy to share my location. Now, at worst, I can share my location with friends. It doesn't let you just share your location with strangers, but it is one of these features that warrants conversation to say, hey, son or daughter, if you're going to use Snap Map, just understand you're now showing everybody where you live, and that might not always be a great idea. So that leads into some of the things to remember about Snap Map, that it is good that by default, you're in ghost mode, meaning that nobody can find you. You actually have to toggle off ghost mode in order to be seen by your friends. But it does have some predatory risk, because over time you accept friends, and even though at max you show your location to friends, how often are all of the people in our friend list who we might be following people that we trust with our specific location? And then also that there's no true parental control around it. If you as a parent have said that the rule is don't show your location on Snap Map, there's no way that you can force that. They can turn that off, as you could see. So that is Snap Map. Now let's jump into stories. There are other social media platforms that have started using stories, specifically Instagram and Facebook, but Snapchat was first. Everybody else copied them. This was their idea. And stories are a 24-hour period of time where you've just dropped in little very raw moments from your day, and they can be very creative. The way to access stories, there's a couple of ways, but one of the easy ways is through the Discover button, or where you would tap down there in the lower right-hand corner. And so I'm going to go ahead and advance to the next slide, and there's going to be a short video that Snapchat provides that tells you what stories are. There you go, a series of snaps. So instead of disappearing, as snaps usually do, they stick for 24 hours. You can see how creative people can be with the different filters, little bitmojis. There's a jam sesh, that's your thing, ukulele, whatever it might be. You share your story every day, and they're accessed right up there at the top. So those are stories. Some things to know about stories is that they can be so creative. Some people, as I say here, are literally virtual artists with how they utilize stories with the different words and gifs and all kinds of things. But there is a doorway to porn, a very unfortunate doorway to explicit content through stories, because there is a browser like Safari or Chrome that lives within Snapchat. And so even if you have every other browser on the phone turned off, you can still, and porn performers know this, so they are exploiting this feature, as I'll show you in just a minute in stories. And then there's also sort of this question of status. There are two different types of stories that you can follow. You can follow stories from people who you are not following as a friend, and they show up in a section of Discover called subscriptions. But if you are actually following somebody and they have followed you back, now Snapchat considers you a friend, so that shows up in the friend section. So there is a subtle form of cyberbullying that can go on if you notice all of a sudden that somebody who you used to follow as a friend has now unfollowed you, or and now shows up in the subscription section. So it's just worth noting that there are those two categories of stories that are attached to whether they have followed each other back and forth as friends. So this is what we call the porn path in Snapchat. See, Snapchat gets a lot of bad press, sometimes warranted, because that's where evidence disappears. But if I could use a hiking illustration, because I love being outside, if Snapchat is the destination, then Instagram is the trailhead. See, Instagram is where content lives and where profiles are discoverable And so what you find is porn performers have Instagram accounts that then say what their Snap name is in order to lead people that way. And predators do the same thing. There's this unfortunate symbiotic relationship that exists between the two apps where individuals make contact through Instagram only to then get to Snapchat where the evidence disappears. And in this case, where there's very easy access through stories into Fan Central, which is a very well-known pornography and explicit content website. So we explain more about that, the link that we'll get from this. Again, I don't think a lot of teens are accessing porn that way. There are a lot of easier ways to get to pornography, but it's worth knowing that it does exist. So how do you create a snap? This is what the app is all about. And that is from the main screen, that big button. See, friends, at the end of the day, Snapchat does not think of itself as social media. Snapchat calls itself a camera. That's what they want to be known as. And so you would simply hit that button in the middle and it takes a photo. And with that photo, you can do different things with it. You can see all the options there along the right-hand side with text and different pictures. And after you go ahead and select a friend to send it to, you have a certain period of time that can last, 2, 3, 4 number of seconds. That's the whole deal, right? Is that it disappears and you can go ahead and select a friend. That is how you create a snap. So some things to remember about snaps. Of course, they're ephemeral, whether you're 14 or 40. If you know it's going to vanish, you might be tempted to take risks. And this is also bait for predators to draw kids towards Snapchat where they can send things that will disappear. And they do also disappear off of Snap servers after a period of time. So although affidavits and other things can be served to Snapchat, they also have very strict policies around how long information is kept on their servers. And I know this because I've had a couple of meetings with senior Snap leadership just to have conversations around avoiding child exploitation, which they do take very seriously. The other aspect of snaps that is worth noting is that they are quick and raw, and that is their purpose, right? Snapchat sees itself as the antithesis of Instagram, where everybody is perfect and polished and your dinner is wonderful. That is not the point of Snapchat. Snapchat is intended to be raw and real in the moment. My hair is a little bit messy. Don't I look cute? That's its purpose. And then finally, there are really no parental controls that can touch anything that goes on with snaps. And actually, Snapchat is quite proud of that in the way of privacy, that they guard the privacy of individual snaps like crazy. And they are not about to let anybody touch them unless forced by law. So what is Discover News? This is also a very popular section. You access Discover, as you learned earlier. We were talking about stories. In the lower right-hand corner, just tap Discover. And when you do that, you are given a whole wall of very interesting and colorful articles here to grab your attention. These are quote unquote digital magazines that are very engaging, meant to be watched and pull people in and full of all kinds of different content. Over the years, this is the section of Snapchat that has gotten somewhat of a well-deserved bad rap. Now, they've come a long ways. Let me just tell you that part there about what if you were attacked by murder hornets, I watched that last night and it freaked me out. But my point being that it's gotten a lot better in terms of the explicit content. But some things to remember about Discover News is that sometimes the content isn't great. It's supposed to be age gated where certain explicit or bending toward explicit content will obey that birthday under age 17 that you establish in your profile, but it has not been perfect. But on the other hand, you can exert some control over the content that lives in your own Discover News feed. In other words, there is an algorithm that is constantly learning and watching what types of Discover stories you are reading. And based on that, it's going to feed you more of that. And so in the link that I'll send after this, I'll show you where to tap and to swipe things away so that over time, you can teach that Discover algorithm to keep some of the junk away and show you more of the good stuff. And then finally, ads. This is primarily where Snapchat makes its money through ad revenue. Great. Finally, let's talk about the chat on Snap. In addition to just sending photos, like a lot of social media like platforms, you can chat with other people just like you would expect. In the lower left-hand corner, you can touch chat, and from there, you can select somebody from your list of people that might be followed. And from there, you just type them a test chat, just like chatting back and forth, just like you might expect, okay? So things to remember about chats, right? There's obvious things to know about chat. Whatever you send, they read. But the one thing that I want to point out is some of that predatory risk. Again, back to that trailhead destination illustration from before, because as soon as contact maybe is made through Instagram and there's a sharing of a snap name, which often happens, instantly what's going to happen if there is somebody with nefarious intent is that they're going to send a message through chat in order to try to engage them in some way. And we've experienced that through test accounts where the activity is voracious. It's unbelievable when the wrong person finds the right kid, how quickly they try to make contact. Now, again, this is not a presentation that is trying to induce an inappropriate level of fear in parents. I do not want our internet safety approach with kids to be fear-based. Based on our research that we've done at middle and high schools in Michigan, around 25% of kids will admit that they've had somebody who they don't know try to make contact with them. It's enough to say, let's have a conversation, but it's not enough to say that we all need to be freaking out about our kids in that way, okay? Just want to make that clear. A few other features that are worth noting are the photo vault and the snap streak. The photo vault, believe it or not, Snapchat does have a section that you can guard with a 4-digit code where you can keep secret photos. And it has been well documented that this is sometimes abused by young people. And then there's the snap streak, which is a feature whereby if I send Doug a snap and he sends me a snap back, that constitutes 1 day of a streak. And I can do that day after day after day. And there's this status that has been attached to the number of days that a snap streak continues. And I've talked to kids who have had snap streaks that are 700, 800, 900 days long. One kid who had a 1,300-day snap streak. So you think about it, for 3 consecutive years, he was waking up every day and feeling that anxiety to send a snap to keep the streak going. So that's some of the risk there. So one question for you, curious, based on the features that we've talked about here, what do you think is the right age for a young person to be using Snapchat? The 4 options are less than 13, in the 13 to 14 range, in the 15 to 16 range, and then maybe in the 17 plus range. If you could go ahead and answer that for me now, I would appreciate it. And we'll close that down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, we'll share the results there. So mostly a little bit older. Now at Protect Young Eyes, we believe that Snapchat is probably better in the 15 to 16 range. If you wanted to know our opinion, we just believe that middle school has enough drama and it doesn't need more with social media. So wait a little bit, wait till they get into high school. That would be our preference. We'll go ahead and stop that poll there. And so when it comes to Snapchat, like any other app, going back to something that we discussed during the toxic trio, is to have conversations about your expectations about usage. 37% of you said that your young people are using Snapchat. That's fine. I just want there to be very open dialogue about some of these features, open-ended questions like some of the ones that you see on the screen here now. If someone sent you a nude, what would you do? Have you ever witnessed kids using Snapchat in a way that made you nervous? What do you think the rules in our house should be about Snapchat? What things are fun, not just what's wrong with it, but what do you like about Snapchat? Having some of those open-ended questions. Again, going back to that hard work in the middle of being curious and having conversation and tending to be more in the area of caring control, which is co-developing controls with them instead of just parental controls. Last year at Protect Young Eyes, we spent quite a bit of time advocating for improvements in that app rating that you saw at the very beginning. I felt like Snapchat in particular, the description there was just not enough. And so we started the Fix App Ratings movement, which you can still go visit at fixappratings.com, which led to a Senate hearing. And like I said, in the past 7 months, I've met twice, once in Washington, D.C., actually both times in Washington, D.C. with senior leadership from Snapchat to talk about things that they are trying to improve to make it a safer spot for kids to play. So I just want to know, in all honesty, how many of you would recommend this webinar to a friend? I'm very open to honest feedback. I want to know if this is helpful, if this sort of information that we have started. These are still fairly new, and so we're still fine-tuning them, and it's important to me to know whether or not it hit the mark and if this is the type of information that you're looking for and that you would want friends of yours to also attend. And my hope is that if you do find this share worthy, that you would please do that. And in the email that you'll get after we finish here in just a moment, you will have, you could share it with a friend. Thank you. A lot of you have answered very positively. I appreciate that. I'll go ahead and end that poll. There's a lot of ways, friends, that you can stay in touch. Like I said, the easiest way being through texting the word protect to the number 66866. There we can check another one off, Snapchat 101. Next week, we'll be talking about pornography in great detail. Again, if you need a certificate of completion, you'll find that in the link that you get afterwards. And friends, that is webinar number 2. I hope you feel slightly more equipped, slightly more informed, and slightly more able to have confident conversations, open and curious conversations with your kids. And that is the information that we have here tonight. Again, I'm Chris from Protect Young Eyes. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to let the webinar continue for just a minute for Doug and I to clear out some of the questions in the Q&A, but for everybody else, please look for an email with some summarizing thoughts and links, and I hope you have a great rest of your night. Take care.